Good day to you. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We've been reading in the book of Deuteronomy. Last time we read Deuteronomy chapter 14. And let's see, Deuteronomy chapter 14 was about clean and unclean animals in general and also about tithing. So now we're ready to read Deuteronomy chapter 15. This is going to be about the sabbatical year and some generosity, things of that nature. I am reading in the Amplified Bible. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release, remission, pardon from debt. This is the regulation for the release. Every creditor shall forgive what he has loaned to his neighbor. He shall not require payment from his neighbor and his brother, because the Lord's release has been proclaimed. You may require repayment from a foreigner, but whatever of yours is with your brother Israelite, your hand shall release. However, there will be no poor among you, since the Lord will most certainly bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess. If only you will listen to and obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all these commandments which I am commanding you today. When the Lord your God blesses you as he has promised you, then you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow, and you will rule over many nations, but they will not rule over you. Now, just listening to those last few verses kind of reminds me of our spot in the world today. The United States is losing its spot in the world as far as I'm concerned. It's a great and wonderful country, but I can see that our leaders have not been doing the right things. You can see that we have been borrowing from other nations, and you can see that other nations are starting to kind of get things over on us, kind of starting to rule us. And that's not the way it should be. But notice, if only you will listen to and obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all these commandments. I mean, that's our problem. We're not getting that blessing anymore as a nation. When the Lord your God blesses you as he has promised, then you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. And you will rule over many nations, but they will not rule over you. And we can see that America has had that in the past, but we can also see some decline and see that that is not so much the truth now as it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago. So it's something to be aware of and realize that the reason for this decline and this degradation is because we are not following, not listening to and obeying the voice of the Lord. Let's continue. If there is a poor man among you, one of your fellow Israelites in any of your cities in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not be heartless, nor close-fisted with your poor brother, but you shall freely open your hand to him and shall generously lend to him whatever he needs. Beware that there is no wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, remission, pardon is approaching, and your eye is hostile or unsympathetic toward your poor brother, and you give him nothing, since he would not have to repay you. For he may cry out to the Lord against you, and it will become a sin for you. You shall freely and generously give to him, and your heart shall not be resentful when you give to him, because for this generous thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all your undertakings. For the poor will never cease to be in the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall freely open your hand to your brother, to your needy, and to your poor in your land. Now notice that they're talking about the poor man and being generous to him to be helpful to the poor man, one of your fellow Israelites, in this case, in any of your cities. But I do also want you to know at the end, he stresses, you shall open your hand to your brother, to your needy, and to your poor in your land. So, just as Jesus would say, your neighbor, and who's your neighbor? Everyone is your neighbor, right? So, this was not intended to restrict their generosity or their merciful giving to only their people, but it was given as an example of, hey, if you have, of course, someone in your family, an Israelite, you're going to help them, but also don't forget to help your other needy and your other poor in your land that may not be so close to you, but you should still be generous to them. If your fellow Israelite, a Hebrew man or woman, is sold to you and serves you for 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall set him free from your service. When you set him free, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. You shall give him generous provisions from your flock, from your threshing floor, and from your winepress. You shall give to him as the Lord your God has blessed you. And you shall remember and thoughtfully consider that you were once a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I am commanding you these things today. Now if the servant says to you, I will not leave you because he loves you and your household, since he is doing well with you, then take an awl and pierce it through his ear into the door, and he shall willingly be your servant always. Also, you shall do the same for your maidservant. So notice this is your fellow Israelite, a Hebrew man or woman, and then later it sounds like they're mainly talking about a man, but at the end again he points out that also you shall do the same for your maidservant. It's intended to be for either servant, man or woman, either one who are in your service. It shall not seem hard to you when you set him free, for he has served you 6 years with double the service of a hired man, so the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. Now I want us to realize too, look here how they're treating this person. Now this person is a servant. We already know there are laws about not being abusive and cruel to your servants. But here, when they go away, you don't send them away empty-handed. You give them something. This is like the idea of a pension or a bonus for service to help them get started in their new life out of that service, out of that bondage. And it's the same. It represents the same as when the children of Israel were leaving Egypt and the Egyptians gave them gold and jewelry and things to help them on their way. You shall consecrate, set apart, to the Lord your God all the firstborn males that are born of your herd and flock. You shall not work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You and your household shall eat it every year before the Lord your God in the place for worship which the Lord chooses. But if it has any defect or injury, such as lameness or blindness or any serious defect, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You shall eat it within your city gates. The ceremonially unclean and the clean alike may eat it as if it were a gazelle or a deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You are to pour it out on the ground like water. Again, this is referring to that celebration, every year where you're going to eat this before the Lord in celebration of what He's blessed you with. It's a representation of the abundance that He's given you. And so when you sit down to eat this, or however they did it, maybe they didn't sit down to eat. I'm not real clear on what their exact ceremony was, but if I remember right, they still sat down to eat. They would be thanking God and praising God and thinking about how He has supplied them with this blessing. This, you could think of it as a harvest if it's food, if it's grain and vegetables and that type of thing, things you would grow, but also from your flock or from your herd. It could be meat, and you would be thanking God for the blessings on your herd and your flock, for all that you have, for everything that you have, and blessing the work of your hand, that type of idea. So, and you'll notice it's to be shared with the ceremonially unclean and the clean alike. You can share this celebration with others, and I think that's a good thing as well. So that's Deuteronomy chapter 15. I want to thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. May God bless you and keep you safe. And remember, God loves you.